Everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. It's nice to see you here. While we're waiting for a few more people to join, if you would like, throw in the chat there where you're from, and uh, and I'll start with a little introduction. I know most of you. I don't know all of you. Um, I'm Richard, Data Success Manager here at Dataedo. And happy to welcome you to this Dataedo Talks session. Um, the idea with this session is to be a little bit structured, maybe semi-structured. The idea is to have a lively conversation, interactive conversation amongst all of you to you know talk about questions that are pertinent to you specifically. You can post your own questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. And as noted in the announcement, I do have some other things we can talk about here. Probably Lineage is going to be the biggest part of the discussion, so we will get there. And also after that, probably some talking about adoption and that. I see that Pyotr Kononov has just joined, founder and CEO. Welcome. We
Hello.
do have also some members of the metadata team to help answer questions about specific situations with Lineage or questions about specific connectors, things like that. So we've got a good group here. Chase is here to
Yes.
make us all official and keep us on track. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so talking about data lineage, what we want to cover today is a little bit about best practices and maybe some challenges that people might be facing with Lineage. And as I mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me. Or, if you post something in the chat, perhaps Chase or Piotr, if you can watch the chat for me. I can't see the chat when I'm sharing screen.
Yeah,
So
I'll
if you
keep an
can
eye on it for
watch
you.
that and break in if needed so we can get all of the discussion. But an interactive discussion is welcome here. If you have other comments you'd like to add to the discussion, feel free and jump in. This is not a formal webinar presentation. This is an informal discussion. Let's all learn from each other. So, data lineage best practices and challenges. Let's start off with some best practices. And this is going to be kind of high level, but the idea here is things that you can do to get the most out of your lineage experience, especially early on as you're learning the process and getting things going. So first thing is, it's important to know that when building automatic lineage, um, it's really important to import and refresh the metadata in the proper order, because it can't make lineage connections between data sources or between report data sets and data sources if those don't exist. So it's important to import those in the proper order. Your data sources first, and then your reports and data sets. So your Tableau, your Power BI, and then ETL packages last, so it can make those connections. If you have data sources that are dependent on one another, get the one that is the source in first, and then the one that is dependent on it in second. So logically think through how the data flows and how it fits together, and make sure that you have sources or inflows for your lineage imported first, and then your targets or your outflows imported second, and it helps make those connections. And if you're not seeing something, you can re-import. So if you you imported your reports first and then your data sources later, you can go back and refresh in the proper order to help it pick up those connections and the automatic lineage between data sources and reports and whatnot correctly. The next thing is just be methodical about how you approach your data lineage. It is going to create as much as it can automatically, but there will be things that you have to do manually. And if you are haphazard or you approach that lineage in an uneven way, it's going to be hard to keep track of where you are and go back and find those gaps to make them. So do your lineage step by step. So perhaps if you're working in desktop, creating a lineage or completing a lineage that was maybe part of it was done automatically, for example, the objects, but you didn't get columns created or mapped automatically, and you need to do those manually. Do all of that step while you're there, rather than doing some of the columns, going to a different object lineage step and doing some more columns. Do them all while you're there so that you don't have to wonder, was it complete? It's that idea of completing every step as you go. And then along with that, just the way you approach all of those views and tables, procedures, all of those things that have lineage associated with them, do them in a methodical way. So for example, on my second example right here, you would be perhaps opening in desktop the list of all of the views in your collection or in a particular data connection, and work through them alphabetically. Make sure that all of the views are done in a methodical way. Same thing for the procedures or the tables. Work through them perhaps alphabetically or by schema, something so that you can keep track of what has been finished and what has not been finished, so that, again, you avoid those gaps. An alternate way to do it would be to start with, for example, a report and then do all of the lineage all the way back to the sources for that one report, and then go on to the next report and repeat. The downside of that, I'm sure you're thinking, is, yeah, it's going to go back and you're going to find some of that work in the lineage, in the warehouse, for example, or in the sources. You're going to find some of that has already been done because it feeds into more than one report. So that one is a little bit harder to track. This second one here of working through your views, your tables, your procedures alphabetically or methodically to make sure you get everything. I find that one to be more useful. And then eventually, after you have your lineages built, at some point you're going to probably want to review those. And again, that review, go through it methodically so that you've looked at everything, rather than trying to keep track in some other way what you've looked at and what you've not looked at. And then finally, just remember, there's always something in your lineage that is going to be manual. We continue to develop the automatic lineage capabilities. There's a million ways that can go wrong. So always be aware that something is going to be manually created. For example, in my repository, I find that I will get most of the columns in a particular step of lineage. I will get most of them mapped, but there will be a few that I have to go back and map manually. Perhaps it's a conflict of a column name. The same column name exists in two input tables or something like that. So just be aware that there will always be something manual, and that will help with perhaps frustration of expecting everything to be automatic, and then being frustrated when you don't see everything automatic. The expectation in your mind should be, it will do as much as it can automatically, and then you will make up the difference manually. Any questions at that point?
None in chat, unless people would like to open up.
Hi, it's Graham Nolan here. I put a question in when I sort of registered. It's something to do with so we added Lineage for a couple of systems, and then the clients added some more columns into the source. What what are the other than doing it methodically, which is obviously a good idea. Have you got any other kind of helpful tips or anything or suggestions about making sure that you can just work on those new columns, if you see what I mean?
So a couple of ideas there. One is when you refresh your metadata from those sources, or if it's a new source, when you bring those in, it should, go ahead and update that. So for example, if you're working on your warehouse and you add some columns or some tables to that, and then those are subsequently used in a report or whatever, or even if they're not, say you have a procedure that is moving data into that warehouse, things like that. When you refresh that metadata, it should pick those up. And if you go to your schema changes tab, of course, it will show you what those changes were, and you can pop over, and based on that list of things that were updated or added, you can go over and check the lineage on those just to make sure that it exists and that it's complete. As far as, automatically picking everything up and, doing it and giving you a report that it was done, things like that, it doesn't exist, but you can definitely use schema changes to know where the changes were so that you can go and look at them, which in my mind is better anyway. I'd rather look at it and verify it than to rely on a report of telling me that something presumably happened.
Yeah, I only just discovered that tab you described there, funnily enough. So yeah, that I was wondering if there was anything else, but yeah, that is probably how I'll do it anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Graham. All right. And yeah, I do have the list of other questions that people put in here. If you feel like it's the appropriate time to ask that question that you posted before, feel free to go ahead and bring those up. Otherwise, I'll get to them as we proceed through this talk. Any other questions? All right.
Yeah, one just popped in chat. Sorry, as we were in there. How can we make a copy of the lineage from one repository to another almost identical repository? By example, from our production environment to our dev or QA environment.
Okay. Good question. To my knowledge, the only way to move from one repository to another is with that merge function that we have. Of course, you have to be careful with duplicates in that case. I'm going to pass that off to Piotr, or maybe some of the engineers. Maybe you know a method of doing that I don't.
So there's currently no method like pushing changes from one repository to another, but you could back up the repository and restore. So from the dev, so it could like complete, one-to-one copy. If it's acceptable, then that's the best way to to move those changes. In the future we will be adding some kind of pushing of changes, but this is a complex functionality.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. All right. So the next part here is challenges you might have as you're starting, usually work with automatic data lineage. And frankly, I hear this one fairly often. You don't see as much automatic lineage as you would expect, or as much as you had expected. So here are some hints, things you can check on that to see what the situation is. The first one is this idea of context in your portal lineage diagram. And let me show you what I mean. This is something that I actually didn't know myself until recently. And so I was confused. I wasn't seeing as much lineage as I expected. So as an example here, we're going to look at this report, let's go to the report right there, worldwide importers, and look at the lineage for that. Here we go, right there. And you can see this report. The report is right here. So that's where the focus is on this report. And we can see that it goes back and data comes from 3 tables in our data warehouse coming through this data set. We look at the columns on that. We can see there are the columns which come from these tables. So it's context based on what the report contains and where that comes from. Now, the place I was confused is when I was looking at the data set for this. Here we go. Take a second for it to load. Here we have about a dozen tables that provide data. They're the tables that send data into this data set. We're now focused on the data set. So the thing is here, not all of those columns are used in the report. They all exist in the data set, but not in the report. And so if we start with the data set, we are looking for all of the tables that actually feed data to the data set. If we are looking at the report, we're looking through the data set to all of the tables that provide data all the way to the report. So it's a context thing. Be sure that you know where you're at and what you're looking at to kind of avoid that confusion. As I said, I had this same confusion myself. I was confused why, if I looked at the data set, I was getting 12 inflow tables, and if I looked at the report, I was only getting 3 from the warehouse. So that's something to pay attention to, is just be aware that idea of context. Any other questions?
Actually, we'll be extending that to present information that there might be actually more tables or columns involved upstream in the 2 version from now. So the next one will be in a month or so, and the next one, the other, would be more like in 4 months. So we're constantly improving the usability and information presented in the Lineage diagrams.
Okay, good to know. So that would be version 24.3, when we can expect more insight into this idea of context and what we should expect to see right there. I see a couple of things have come into chat.
Yeah, and also another comment, I'd like also to focus more on some kind of auditing and analytics on the Lineage creation. So how many flows were built, how many column Lineage which are missing, and so more like a high level overview and an option to dig deeper to see the what happened, what still needs the attention. There's no ETA on that. But this is another direction I'd like to go with the product.
Okay. And that would address questions like the one that Graham had, this idea of what is new and what's incomplete. Piotr, would that be added possibly as a section in Steward Hub, where it's suggestions of things?
I think so. So some kind of dashboard and maybe some more detailed reports. That show different perspectives on the Lineage. So high level of what's the progress in total by source over time and so on. What was done manually, what was done automatically. Somewhere in the Steward Hub.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how useful that would be as people incrementally work through, reviewing and completing Lineage. That would be very useful. All right. Comments, questions?
I think we're good. The ones in chat were unrelated. There was conversation, so you're fine.
Okay, great. All right. Find where I'm at here. So consider the context in your diagram. Make sure that what you expect is actually able to be expected, appropriately expected. The next one here, refresh your metadata again. I mentioned that one before. It's entirely possible that you or someone at your organization, for example, imported the reports first and then imported the data warehouse. It just happens, and it's not a problem. It's not a big deal. Just go back and refresh those, which you're going to refresh them anyway, periodically. So just do it in the right order. A comment here, you know that we have the ability to schedule those metadata refresh jobs. And I've mentioned to some of you the idea of putting those jobs into a batch file and just scheduling the batch file. Again, just put them in the right order in the batch file so that it processes them in the right order and builds as much lineage as it possibly can. Okay, verify your data sources are configured correctly. For example, the SQL dialect. And let's go to desktop here. So for example, if I look at a connection here, this is a SQL server. Right here, you have this ability to select the dialect that's appropriate for your connection. And obviously for SQL Server, it's going to be this T-SQL, but in other cases, it might be something else. And I would like at this point to actually let someone from the metadata team talk about dialects and talk about what is supported now and kind of what to expect as we move forward, because I know there are questions about that and questions about capability around dialects, particularly with procedures. So someone from the metadata team, if you can help us with that.
Okay, so at the moment we are supporting 5 dialects for lineage from selects and create views statements, and that's the MySQL. It's used in MySQL and MariaDB mostly. PLSQL, it's Oracle. PostgreSQL, it's also works in Redshift uses PostgreSQL. Snowflake SQL and Transact SQL, which is used in SQL Server and
Azure
Synapse.
SQL and Synapse, yeah?
Yeah, mostly there. Okay, and now we are working on support for creating a lineage from procedures and functions. Currently, with 24.1 version, we support only in Transact SQL, creating that lineage. Starting from 24.2, we extend this parser, and it will also work with some common table expressions, or when you use tables as variables and a few other things. And starting from 24.3, we add support for PostgreSQL procedures dialect. It's PL/PG/SQL, and also that pure SQL used in Postgres procedures. We don't want to support that when you use Python inside Postgres or C, like those languages we will not support, but those SQL dialects we gonna support. And I think that's it.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure who requested what language you're using in Postgres. Who was asking about?
I think it was Jiva,
Jiva.
and it was Postgres. I'm not sure if there was any more information about it than that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat your question?
So what's the language for stored procedures in Postgres SQL that you're using? Is it SQL? Is it PGSQL? Is it Python? Or, because...
Yeah, currently we are using the PGSQL.
Okay.
Because most of our data objects are sitting on top of the Postgres RDSs.
Okay. It's good because we are planning to support PGSQL.
Okay, and that's one that's coming in like 24.3, right?
Yeah. Yes, and then
Yes.
will be extended in 24.4 with
Okay.
other segments.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, so this is one of these situations where we're releasing support, you know, as quickly as we can and working through use cases and demand. So again, if you're not seeing as much lineage as you want, let's go back here. Again, it's not on here, but another one of these is just make sure that it's expected at this point. I guess we have it right here. Document, confirm your expectations are valid. Just to know what is available currently, stay up to date on your version upgrades, and you know, send me questions if you're wondering if something should be expected at this point. This question about what language the parser supports is a great question. Currently, it's supporting the T-SQL, but as it is further developed, it will start to include other dialects as well. So that's one of these examples of just be sure that you know what is supported and what is happening kind of under the hood as far as these connectors go. The next one here, check the SQL in your procedures and views. Again, this is one that came and bit me a short time ago. I was looking at this connection here, right here, to a transactional database, and I was looking at procedures. For example, here's one right here, get employee updates, and I was not seeing lineage for it. So right here, no lineage. I expected to see lineage because it is SQL, SQL-based procedure, all of these things. I expected to see it. I didn't see it. And so the answer turned out to be that there are there's structure and there's logic in the script here that we don't currently support here. For example, this temp table right here. Another one is CTEs. These things, we're developing those continually. So at this point, it's not unexpected that it wouldn't be creating it for these scripts. But in the future, that will be addressed and we'll get more and more automatic lineage. But I was frustrated because I was simply looking at the fact that I had no lineage, and I didn't dig deeper to find the reason actually exists in the script that was provided along with that data connection, that database. So again, it's this idea of know what to expect, and maybe I can say don't blame Dataedo all of the time, because sometimes it's just that's what we have to work with, and can't change that. Next one is check your linked sources right here. And again, this is the idea of seeing the connections, like for example, between your data warehouse and your data sets. You need to have those linked sources configured correctly so that they'll work and go ahead and pick up the dependencies in, for example, in the data warehouse. You can see some of them right here, that these two, the last two right there, came in along with this metadata import, and those work for me. I had to create another one manually. You see that is a manual definition. I created that one manually. These others, it turns out they're not actually used here, so it doesn't matter in my case. But sometimes you might see this icon. It is a database icon with an orange question mark. That's telling us that we don't know what the source database is. So if you see these, go and check to make sure that your source database has been imported and that you have updated that to reflect what the source ought to be. And again, check your dialect to make sure it's the right dialect for that SQL that it's trying to parse right there. Yeah, again, just check your linked sources, make sure that they exist and they're configured properly to get those connections between your different data sources like these over here. That's the whole purpose of that, is to get those connections for you. Otherwise, you would be doing them manually. You know, every time you pull data from your warehouse into a reporting data set, you would be creating those manually. You don't want to do that. You want to have it all be automatic. Questions or comments on that?
Nothing in chat.
Right. Nothing for metadata?
Maybe a comment. After you set those links, you should re-import the Power BI connection in this case. So yeah, because just linking this is just a pointer. We have to repeat the process so that Dataedo can analyze the lineage again.
Right, right. Thanks for that reminder. Refreshing that metadata is always important anytime you make any changes to any of these things. For example, if you were to change the SQL dialect on your data connection, of course you would want to re-import to see, you know, get as much automatic lineage as you can from those updates. Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah. And maybe another reminder, maybe more high level, remember to schedule your imports. Currently, you can do it with command lines. And in this version coming up in a month or so, we are shipping a scheduler, which will make it way simpler from this UI and maybe from web UI as well, to schedule at specific time intervals. So say every week, every day. Yeah, so it will make it easier, but the value of your metadata is much higher if it's up to date.
Exactly. And for any of you who don't know how to do that, you go in and you import the changes with your metadata. Go to the connection, and it's going to read. You're all familiar with this process. Right there is where you save that import command that you can schedule and have it run automatically. And as I mentioned, if you have several of them and you want to put them into a batch file, you can do that too. So that's where you get that import command so that you can schedule the updates, in case anybody didn't know where that comes from. All right. The next item here, I mentioned this before, but look at the Dataedo documentation to make sure that what you expect is actually able to be expected. For example, some connectors don't have lineage, automatic lineage enabled yet or built. So just check the documentation to see what is expected and make sure that you're not misunderstanding or being frustrated when something isn't there, when it's not even supposed to be there. Check the documentation. If you find something that's incorrect with the documentation, absolutely let us know so that we can double check that and keep the documentation valid and correct. And that's right here. If you believe something is not working correctly, if you believe you found a bug, contact me or contact support, and we'll definitely get a ticket and investigate that. The other place that's useful is if you need automatic lineage from a connector and it doesn't function, again, let us know so that we can prioritize the development activity there to make sure that we're getting the capabilities that you need most. I think I touched all of the lineage questions that people submitted. If I missed any, or if you have more, feel free to bring those up now.
Didn't we have a question regarding multidimensional SSIS?
It's multidimensional cubes and linking those to Power BI, getting lineage between them.
Okay, but the high-level answer on that is we have built a complete cube on the column level cube to data source view, I believe, to the actual source relational database lineage. Yeah, so you should expect a really powerful lineage for that. If something's not working, then we'll have to look at the specific case.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Thanks for that. All right, good. So as I said, if you are not if you're not getting as much lineage as you think you should, and you've been through those steps, do please contact us, and we'll investigate and see what the situation is, and figure out what the best way forward is on that sort of thing. The other topic for today was about adoption, and I think this will be fairly short. The things I wanted to talk about adoption is, kind of introductory. Your catalog is only as useful as the number of people who use it. If there's only one person using it, it becomes a very expensive catalog. If you have a lot of people in lots of teams using it regularly and relying on it, then it becomes, more useful. And as time goes on, it gains momentum in and of itself and becomes more and more accepted and used by the organization. You want to get to that point where people rely on that rather than the old method of calling up their favorite expert in IT and asking them a question. So that's kind of the goal here, is get lots of people to adopt and use your catalog, because it's a lot of work to build, and having more people use it is where the value comes from. So with that in mind, I've got a list of some ideas here. I did not put these in the PDF there that I just distributed. So these are just some thoughts, and I'm happy to have any of you who have ideas to increase adoption. I'm happy to have you share those if you want. So the first one is, I like to break down the creation of data catalog into little pieces, little manageable pieces that are focused on use cases that are consumed by specific users and depend on specific data as inputs. So a specific question like, do we have duplicate reports in our system? And then you start building the catalog to answer that question. And then you deliver that result through Dataedo portal to those people who that question applies to. And then you go on to another question and another question, and you continually build these out in small pieces so that you don't spend 2 years building a big catalog only to find out that you did it wrong, or it doesn't address the questions that people actually have. So you get involvement. This is the next step here, is you get involvement from stakeholders and subject matter experts. Stakeholders to find out what they want, subject matter experts to fully understand the data, the data sources, all of that knowledge, and get it into the catalog and then out to those stakeholders. Very nice if you can find champions amongst your stakeholders who will encourage other people to be involved and to use the catalog as you build it, to rely on it. It's this idea of adoption again. And if you have a champion or a promoter, there's the right word, they will encourage people to use the tool and increase that value. As we work, data success here at Dataedo, as we work with you in your subscription to work through these use cases, one of the things that I like to concentrate on is adoption and helping you get your users to adopt the data catalog. I don't want to leave you, in that space by yourself, where you're trying to get other people to adopt the tool without them fully understanding the value and the benefits of that. And I want to help with that adoption phase. So I don't want to be involved only during onboarding and the initial development and training. I want to be involved with you all the way through the project, through these multiple use cases, so that we can, get the tool and get the content developed to the best way possible, involve stakeholders so that it answers their questions, and then roll it out and get them to actually adopt the tool and rely on it. During all of those phases, you want to rely on feedback from the end users, the stakeholders, the subject matter experts, all of these people. You want to get their feedback to address any shortages or misunderstandings that might happen during development. For example, custom fields. Maybe they want a particular attribute that you didn't think of. And as you're working through development, they can bring that up and say, hey, we'd also really like to know this. And so you know that you can build that in there and have that feedback loop so that you get the best possible product out for them. As far as actually getting people to use the tool, that's difficult. It can be difficult because it's a culture shift. People are very used to doing things a certain way. I mentioned this idea of people calling their favorite contact in IT and asking them, do we have this data? Where is it? How do I use it? Whatever the question is, what does this column mean? What does it contain? That person-to-person contact seems really easy and comfortable, and people are used to it. In the long run, it's not as effective because they're wasting time. They're spending their time reaching out. They're wasting the time of the expert who has to answer, possibly has to go and do research before they answer. And there's, days can go by while this communication happens. And so this idea of giving them a tool that they can just log on and ask the question immediately, it's easy to do, but it's hard to get them to adopt because it is a culture shift. So we want to make it easy for that to happen. We want to also make them recognize that it's useful for them. And it all comes down to emotion. You have to engage them at an emotional level and make them viscerally feel the benefit to themselves. Otherwise, they will default to that easy way that they've always been used to. So emotion, appeal to their emotion. This will save you time and effort and free you up to do other things. All of these things, they need to feel success, and they need to feel successful and capable, enabled. All of those things help them engage with your new tool. As far as management goes, it's return on investment. This costs money, and it costs effort for whoever's working with the catalog and building that content. So anything you can do to demonstrate return on investment, things like we saved that subject matter expert in IT that I mentioned, we saved, 20 hours of her time last month that she was not answering questions directly because people were getting the answers from Dataedo. That saves a lot of money. And you can convert that into dollars and explain and demonstrate those differences. So those sorts of things. Those are the ideas about adoption. Get people involved, help them feel emotionally engaged and enabled, and talk about money. People don't like to talk about money, but it is very important to demonstrate the ongoing value of that. All right. Any questions about that or about anything else?
Yeah, so there was a couple things that came up. Moosh, you had asked me one privately, so I would recommend emailing that to us, and I shot that to you directly. But the question was also asked regarding our licensing model, and Moosh shared that his biggest obstacle is promoting the use of data catalogs for reader access because you need a license or an export. So the way that ours works, you can see this on our website if you'll go to Dataedo.com, and then you can just go to the pricing tab, but we actually don't charge for viewers. So you can share it with your entire organization and pay no costs associated to however many people you would like to view it with within your organization. We also now have an unlimited plan for editors, which would allow you to share it with as many contributors and editors within the organization as you'd like. So again, both of those are on our pricing page, well spelled out. So if you'd like to check that out there, you have it. Graham also mentioned, I like the idea of using Dataedo to present the answer to a question, a side benefit being showcasing the product itself.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
Thank you.
that's true. That's true. This idea of answering a question, excuse me, it's one of the reasons I like this idea of doing these little use cases that are around a question, so that you address that specific question. The extension to that is when you have your rollout meeting with those users. So let's say you had a question from the HR group and you built your initial project or that use case around that question or that series of questions. You go into that meeting and you demonstrate and you use those questions as the example because you know they want it and you know that you addressed it. So as you search and demonstrate things, you know the answer's there, rather than wondering, well, are they going to ask a question and I'm not sure I answered it with my tool so far? You can demonstrate success using those questions as the basis for your initial rollout meeting with those users. And then you go to your next use case, different users, different questions, or maybe same users, but different questions. And you do it again. And when you have the rollout meeting, you use those for the example and you demonstrate success from the catalog based on questions that are pertinent to them. It becomes another way of making this visceral connection between them and the catalog. All right, good. Well, before we close again, if you have questions, obviously, send me an email, richard@dataedo.com. If you have questions, you can send them to me. If you have problems, you can send them to me or to support@dataedo.com. We'll get a ticket and investigate those sorts of things. If you have specific questions about connectors, what they're doing or what they're not doing, or what you expect them to do, what you want them to do, again, send those to me so that we can, evaluate those and get them into the development process. All right, Thomas, we have been having issues with configuring portal. Can't see the columns in data lineage. So Thomas, presumably you're on a recent, you're upgraded to the new version. You shouldn't be limited there. There are two different places you can see lineage in Portal. One is if you look at the connection as a whole or the domain as a whole, you get that big overview picture. By design, that does not enable viewing the columns. If you want to see the columns, go to objects like reports, a specific report, a specific table, and look at it there. And you should be able to see the columns there. If you can't, let me know and we'll investigate. But there's those two different views.
Good, thanks.
You're welcome. All right. Good. Yeah, Mush, if you want to email me directly and we can get through any other questions that you might have outstanding, that's fine. No problem. All right. Good. Thank you all. Hope you all have a good day. And we'll be repeating this activity in 2 weeks, different topics. So if you're interested, go ahead and watch for that announcement coming out.